Their first meeting was in NextGen's conference room. Elena was reviewing financial documents when Daniel walked in, carrying a laptop and wearing jeans and a worn t-shirt that contrasted sharply with Marcus's expensive suits. "You must be Elena Frost," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel Thornton. I have to admit, I'm surprised Marcus agreed to bring in a consultant. His ego usually doesn't allow for admitting he needs help." Elena shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the direct eye contact, the intelligence evident in his eyes. Sometimes survival instinct overrides ego. Daniel laughed. "True. Look, I know Marcus probably has his own version of what's wrong with this company, but if you want the technical truth, I can give you that." Over the next 2 hours, Daniel provided Elena with the most honest assessment of NextGen solutions she had heard. He didn't sugarcoat the problems, didn't try to shift blame. He simply laid out the facts. Marcus had made promises to clients that the technology couldn't deliver, had ignored Daniel's warnings about overextension, had prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. "Why do you stay?" Elena asked finally. "If Marcus is ignoring your expertise, why not leave and start your own company?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Because I believe in the core technology. And because—" He hesitated. "Because I keep hoping Marcus will finally listen, will finally put the company ahead of his ego." Elena recognized something in Daniel's voice. A loyalty that hadn't yet been completely broken, but was close. It reminded her uncomfortably of her own past loyalty to Marcus, to Jessica. "He won't change," she said quietly. "Men like Marcus don't change. They just get better at hiding their flaws." Daniel studied her carefully. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I go by Elena now. Emma Chun died 5 years ago. You and Jessica killed her." Elena's voice was calm, conversational. "Please sit down. I understand you want to discuss your company's strategic direction." Marcus sat slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "I don't understand. You're the business consultant? You're Elena Frost. Surprised? I suppose you thought I'd stay broken forever. Thought that when you took my business and destroyed my reputation, that was the end of Emma Chen's story." Elena smiled, and she knew it didn't reach her eyes. But STO 548 Rise don't end where villains think they do. Elena. Whatever you're calling yourself now, I don't know what game you're playing. No game. You need help. Your company is drowning. You've made strategic errors that are compounding. In 6 months, maybe less, you'll be forced into bankruptcy or a hostile acquisition. You need someone who can turn it around. Elena leaned back, completely at ease. "And I'm the best at what I do. The question is whether your pride will let you accept help from the woman you betrayed." Unexpected complication. Marcus, desperate and cornered, agreed to hire Elena as a consultant. The contract was airtight, giving Elena access to every aspect of NextGen Solutions operations. She would essentially control the company's strategy, while Marcus remained the public face. That's when Elena met Daniel Thornton. Daniel was Marcus's business partner and chief technology officer, though Elena's research had shown he was much more than that. Daniel was the genuine talent behind NextGen Solutions. While Marcus handled sales and public relations, Daniel actually developed the technology. He was quiet, brilliant, and from what Elena's investigators had learned, completely honest, a rarity in Marcus's world. Elena's entry into Marcus's life was choreographed with perfect precision. She had Marcus Reed, her PR specialist, arrange for her to be profiled in several major business publications. The articles painted her as a mysterious business consultant who had turned around several failing companies, a strategic genius with an instinct for finding hidden value. The articles were released strategically, timed to coincide with NextGen Solutions' quarterly earnings report, which showed the company struggling. Elena knew that Marcus, desperate for solutions, would read anything about successful business strategies. She was right. 2 weeks after the profiles ran, her office received a call from NextGen Solutions requesting a consultation. Elena smiled when her assistant relayed the message. The fish had taken the bait. She kept Marcus waiting for 3 weeks, establishing that she was in high demand. When they finally met, it was in a neutral location, a high-end restaurant where she had already established herself as a regular. She arrived first, positioned at a table where she could watch Marcus enter, could observe him before he saw her. He looked older than she remembered, stress evident in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He was still handsome in a conventional way, but Elena felt nothing as she watched him. The man she had loved, had planned to marry, was gone. In his place was just a businessman in trouble, nothing more. When Marcus approached the table and saw her, he froze. For a moment, true fear crossed his face as recognition dawned. Elena let the moment stretch, let him squirm before speaking. "Hello, Marcus. It's been a long time." His face cycled through emotions, shock, confusion, calculation. Elena could almost see his mind working, trying to understand what was happening. "Emma?" But the office said Elena Frost. "I want to be clear about something," Elena told them during a meeting in her Brooklyn brownstone office. "What we're doing isn't illegal. Every move we make will be completely above board, completely ethical. I'm not interested in becoming what I despise." Sophia nodded approvingly. "That's the only way I work." "What's the target?" Elena laid out files on Marcus Blackwell and Jessica Parker, detailing their businesses, their financial situations, their vulnerabilities. "These two people destroyed my previous life through betrayal and manipulation. I want to show them what it feels like to lose everything. But more than that, I want to build something better from the ruins." James studied the financial documents with professional interest. NextGen Solutions is a house of cards. 3 well-placed moves and it collapses. The question is whether you want to be the one holding the cards when it falls. "That's exactly what I want," Elena said. "I want to be the white knight who rides in to save his business, only to slowly reveal that I'm the last person he should have trusted." Marcus Reed, the PR specialist, smiled. "That's beautifully poetic." And Parker Lux. "Similar approach but different execution. Jessica's problem is creative bankruptcy and financial overextension. I want to offer her everything she needs, then show her that success built on stolen ideas and betrayal is no success at all." Sophia leaned forward. "What's your endgame? Do you want to destroy them or redeem them?" It was the question Elena had been asking herself for 4 years. What did she really want? Revenge was sweet, but as her grandmother had written, it could also be hollow. "I want them to understand what they did," Elena said finally. "I want them to feel the weight of their choices. And then I want to move on with my life, free of the past." "That's healthy," Sophia said. "Revenge with a conscience. I can work with that." The first move. The product that had made his reputation was facing increased competition. He needed an influx of capital and strategic guidance or the whole thing would collapse. Jessica's fashion boutiques, branded as Parker Lux, were struggling differently. She had expanded too quickly, opening stores in markets she didn't understand. Her designs, once fresh and innovative, had become derivative. Fashion bloggers who had once praised her now criticized her for lack of originality. She was hemorrhaging money and reputation simultaneously. Their marriage was even worse off. The investigators provided photos of Marcus with various women at hotels and restaurants. Jessica had been seen arguing publicly with Marcus at charity events. They maintained the appearance of a successful couple, but beneath the surface, everything was rotting. Elena studied the reports with the same careful attention she had given to her grandmother's journals. These were not people to pity. They had made their choices, had hurt her deliberately, had prospered from her pain. But they were also self-destructing, which meant Elena needed to time her intervention carefully. She needed to arrive in their lives not as Emma Chun, victim, but as Elena Frost, savior. Only then could she truly control the narrative. Assembling the team. Elena's network had grown to include a diverse group of professionals, all of whom had their own reasons for wanting to see justice done in the business world. There was Sofia Rodriguez, a brilliant attorney who specialized in corporate law and had a personal vendetta against unethical business practices. There was James Wu, a forensic accountant who could find financial irregularities that others missed. And there was Marcus Reed, no relation to Marcus Blackwell, which was often a source of dark humor, a PR specialist who understood how to craft and control public narratives. "You're not just building a business," David observed during one of their meetings. "You're building an army." Elena smiled. "Is it that obvious?" Only to someone who's been where you are. David leaned back in his chair, studying her with shrewd eyes. Whatever you're planning, whatever wrong you're planning to right, just make sure you don't lose yourself in the process. It was advice Elena filed away, even as she continued her careful, methodical preparation. By year 3, Elena's consulting firm had expanded beyond art into general business strategy. She had a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely discreet. Companies called her when they needed problems solved, when they needed competitors outmaneuvered, when they needed strategic thinking that went beyond conventional wisdom. She invested her earnings carefully, building a portfolio that rivaled her grandmother's. She learned everything she could about Marcus's tech startup, about Jessica's fashion empire, about the weaknesses in their businesses and their lives. She watched from afar as their marriage showed signs of strain. Gossip columns mentioned arguments at public events, separate vacations, the telltale signs of a relationship built on passion but lacking the foundation of trust. Good, Elena thought. Let them begin to crumble from within. By the time she made her move, they would already be weakened. The reconnaissance. Year 4 of Elena's transformation was dedicated to reconnaissance. She hired private investigators, discreet, professional, expensive. They provided detailed reports on every aspect of Marcus and Jessica's lives. Marcus's tech startup, NextGen Solutions, had been successful initially, but was now facing challenges. His aggressive expansion had left the company over-leveraged. Several key employees had left, citing Marcus's erratic management style. She started with her appearance. The long hair she had worn since college was cut into a sleek, professional bob. The soft, artistic clothes she had favored were replaced with power suits that commanded attention. She took classes in business strategy, finance, and negotiation. She hired a voice coach to add authority to her speech, a personal trainer to build physical strength that matched her growing mental toughness. 6 months after arriving in New York, Emma Chen legally changed her name to Elena Frost. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Emma, the warm, trusting girl who had been destroyed, was gone. Elena, cool and strategic, had taken her place. But Elena kept Emma's heart hidden beneath the ice. She would need it later. Building the empire. Elena's first business venture was simple but strategic. Using her grandmother's connections in the import business and her own knowledge of the art world, she launched a consulting firm that helped wealthy international clients navigate American art markets. Her pitch was perfect. She understood both the business and the art, could speak the language of money and beauty with equal fluency. The business took off faster than she had dared hope. Within a year, she had a roster of clients that included tech billionaires, oil executives, and entertainment moguls. She charged premium rates and delivered exceptional results. More importantly, she began building a network of allies, people who had been burned by unethical business practices, who understood the value of loyalty and justice. One of her first major clients was David Park, a Korean-American tech entrepreneur whose startup had been stolen by a former partner. Elena didn't just help him acquire art. She helped him strategize a business comeback that eventually allowed him to reclaim his company. David became not just a client but a friend, someone who understood the fire that burned beneath Elena's cool exterior. New identity, new purpose. The Brooklyn brownstone was a revelation. 3 stories of elegant architecture, filled with antiques and art that spoke of a life lived with both sophistication and purpose. But it was the library that captured Emma's attention. Walls lined with books and, as her grandmother's letter had promised, shelves filled with leather-bound journals spanning decades. Emma spent the next 3 months doing nothing but reading. She closed herself off from the world, living on the inheritance, devouring her grandmother's life story. And what a story it was! Lillian Chun had arrived in America at age 16 with a merchant family that had lost everything in China's political upheavals. Instead of accepting poverty, she had educated herself, learning not just English but the language of business, of power, of strategic thinking. By age 30, she owned an import-export company. By 40, she was one of the wealthiest women in New York. But the journals also revealed something else. Lillian had been betrayed by a business partner who had been her lover. Instead of collapsing, she had spent 5 years methodically outmaneuvering him, eventually acquiring his company and transforming it into part of her own empire. The journals detailed every move, every strategy, every lesson learned. Emma read these sections over and over, taking notes, creating her own plans. But she also read Lillian's reflections written years later, cautionary tales about the cost of revenge, about victories that felt hollow, about the importance of building something meaningful, rather than just destroying what others had built. Revenge, Lillian had written in one entry, is a dish best served with a side of redemption. Otherwise, you risk becoming what you despise. Emma took those words to heart. She wasn't interested in simple revenge. She wanted transformation of herself, of her situation, of the entire narrative that Marcus and Jessica had written about who she was. But I never stopped watching over you, my darling girl. I have followed your life from a distance, celebrated your successes and grieved your sorrows. I know about the gallery. I know about the betrayal. I know about the darkness you are facing now. I also know something that perhaps you have forgotten. You come from a line of strong women who have survived worse and emerged victorious. Your great-great-grandmother came to America with nothing but courage and determination. Your great-grandmother built a business empire during the Depression. I myself rose from poverty to wealth through intelligence and strategic thinking. This inheritance is not charity, Emma. It is an investment in the warrior I know you can become. The question is not whether you have been knocked down. Life knocks everyone down eventually. The question is whether you will stay down or rise up stronger than before. Inside the brownstone in the library on the second floor, you will find my journals. Read them. Learn from my mistakes and my victories. And when you are ready, decide who you want to be. The broken girl who let betrayal define her, or the woman who transforms pain into power. The choice, as always, is yours. With love across the years, Lillian Chen. Emma read the letter 3 times, each reading bringing new understanding. Her grandmother hadn't just left her money. She had left her a choice, a challenge, a path forward out of the darkness. For the first time in a year, Emma felt something other than pain and despair. She felt anger, yes, but also something more powerful, determination. Marcus and Jessica had taken everything from her, had left her for dead in the wreckage of her former life. It was time to show them that Emma Chun was far from dead. It was time to rise. Yes. This is Harold Rothstein from Rothstein & Associates, attorneys at law in New York. I'm calling regarding the estate of Lillian Chun. Emma frowned. I don't know anyone by that name. She was your paternal grandmother, Miss Chun. She passed away 3 weeks ago, and you are named as the primary beneficiary in her will. Emma's mind reeled. That's impossible. My father said his mother died when he was young. There was a pause. I can only tell you what's in the documents before me, Miss Chun. Lillian Chun was very much alive until recently, and she has left you a substantial inheritance. I need you to come to New York to finalize the paperwork. The mysterious letter. 2 days later, Emma sat in a sleek Manhattan office, staring at documents that made no sense. The grandmother she had never known, who her father had told her died decades ago, had left Emma a brownstone in Brooklyn, a portfolio of investments worth over $3 million, and a sealed letter to be opened only by Emma herself. Harold Rothstein, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes, slid the letter across his desk. Your grandmother was quite specific about this. You're to read it alone, and only after you've been informed of the inheritance. Emma's hands shook as she took the envelope. The paper was heavy, expensive, and her name was written in elegant script across the front. Back in her hotel room that evening, Emma finally opened the letter. The handwriting was the same elegant script, and as she read, tears began to stream down her face. My dearest Emma, if you are reading this, then I have passed from this world and you have finally learned of my existence. I imagine you have questions and I wish I could be there to answer them in person. Your father and I had a falling out many years ago over choices I made in my own life, choices he could never forgive. He told you I was dead, and in his mind perhaps I was her on what should have been her wedding day. But Marcus wasn't interested in running a gallery. He forced a sale, taking half the proceeds and leaving Emma with barely enough to cover her remaining legal debts. The new owners, associates of Marcus's, immediately changed the gallery's direction, releasing the artists Emma had nurtured and replacing them with commercial pieces that made Emma's soul ache. Within 6 months, Emma Chun had lost everything. Her business, her reputation, her savings, her faith in human goodness. She moved out of her beautiful apartment and into a tiny studio in a neighborhood she would never have considered before. She took a job as a clerk in a corporate art dealership, surrounded by soulless reproductions that mocked everything she had once believed about art's power to transform lives. Rock bottom. The one-year anniversary of her canceled wedding found Emma sitting on the floor of her studio apartment, surrounded by newspaper clippings about Marcus and Jessica. They had married 6 months ago in a lavish ceremony in Napa Valley, the same place they had been carrying on their affair while Emma planned what she thought would be her own wedding. Jessica's fashion boutique had expanded to 3 locations. Marcus had used his share of the gallery sale to launch a tech startup that was already generating millions. They had taken everything from Emma and used it to build their empire. Emma looked at her reflection in the darkened window and barely recognized the person staring back. Her eyes were hollow, her face gaunt from meals skipped because she was too tired to care. She had become a ghost, haunting the ruins of her own life. Her phone rang, breaking the silence of the apartment. An unknown number. Emma almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, fate, desperation made her pick up. "Is this Emma Chan?" a professional voice asked. "Get out." Emma's voice rose to a scream that probably carried down to the ballroom below. "Get out before I have security throw you both into the street." The fall from grace. What followed was a blur of horror and humiliation that Emma would spend years trying to forget. The wedding was canceled. The guests sent home with hasty explanations that fooled no one. The story spread through their social circle like wildfire. Emma Chan, jilted at the altar by her fiancé and best friend. The photos that had been meant to capture the happiest day of her life instead documented her walking out of the hotel alone, still in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face. But the personal betrayal was only the beginning of Emma's nightmare. 3 days after the canceled wedding, Marcus served her with legal papers. He was suing for half ownership of her art gallery, claiming that his business advice and financial support over the past 2 years entitled him to a share of the business. Emma stared at the documents in disbelief, remembering now the countless times Marcus had insisted on being involved in gallery decisions, the contracts he had convinced her to let him review, the partnerships he had encouraged her to form. He had been planning this all along. Using her, manipulating her, positioning himself to take what she had built with her own hands, her own vision, her own years of hard work. Emma fought the lawsuit with everything she had, pouring her savings into legal fees, spending sleepless nights reviewing documents and preparing depositions. But Marcus had been clever. He had emails showing his contributions to the gallery. He had bank statements showing loans he had made. Loans Emma had thought were gifts between partners building a life together. He had testimony from gallery employees he had befriended, people who spoke of his involvement in daily operations. The judge ruled in Marcus's favor. The gallery that Emma had built from nothing. That was what struck Emma most forcefully. Jessica's hands were steady, calm, as if this were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Emma, you need to understand. How long?" Emma's voice rose now, cracking with the weight of betrayal. "How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé?" Marcus sighed, running his hand through his hair with the same gesture Emma had once found endearing. "Does it matter? Emma, we need to talk about this like adults." Like adults. Emma felt something break inside her, something fundamental and irreparable. "I'm supposed to marry you in less than 2 hours. There are 300 people downstairs waiting to watch us exchange vows." "Vows that would be a lie," Jessica said quietly, and there was something almost like pity in her voice that made Emma's stomach turn. "Emma, Marcus and I have been together for over a year. We tried to fight it, we really did, but some things are just meant to be." Over a year. The words echoed in Emma's mind. Over a year of lies, of betrayal, of moments when she had trusted these 2 people more than anyone else in the world. Over a year of Jessica helping her plan this wedding, choose this dress, prepare for this day, all while sleeping with the man Emma loved. "The gallery showing last spring," Emma said, memories clicking into place like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. "You said you were in Los Angeles for a fashion expo." Marcus said he was in Seattle for a business meeting. "We were in Napa," Marcus said simply. "Emma, you have to understand what you and I have had. It was comfortable, safe. But what Jessica and I have, it's passion. It's real." Emma looked at the two of them standing together, united in their betrayal, and felt something shift inside her. The pain was still there, sharp and overwhelming, but underneath it, something else was beginning to grow. Something cold and hard and unforgiving. "Get out," she said quietly. "Emma, we need to," Jessica began. The perfect life shattered. Emma-chan stood before the mirror in her bridal suite, her hands trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace veil that cascaded down her shoulders. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the luxury hotel, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. At 28 years old, she had built a life that seemed pulled from a dream. Her art gallery in downtown San Francisco had become one of the most respected in the city, showcasing emerging artists and hosting events that drew collectors from across the country. And today she was marrying Marcus Blackwell, the charming entrepreneur who had swept into her life 2 years ago, with his confident smile and grand promises. "You look absolutely stunning," her maid of honor Jessica Parker said from behind her. Jessica had been Emma's best friend since college, the person who had stood by her through every challenge and triumph. They had laughed together, cried together, built their dreams side by side. Jessica's own fashion boutique stood just 3 blocks from Emma's gallery, and they had often joked about being the dynamic duo of the San Francisco Arts District. Emma turned to face her friend, tears of happiness gathering in her eyes. "I can't believe this is really happening. After everything we've been through, Jess. All those late nights building the gallery. All those times I thought I'd never find someone who truly understood me." Jessica smiled, but something flickered in her eyes that Emma would only recognize later, in the terrible clarity of hindsight. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Emma. Every single bit." The wedding was set to begin in 2 hours. 300 guests were already gathering in the grand ballroom downstairs. The flowers had been arranged, the cake stood like a tower of white perfection, and the string quartet was preparing to play the music Emma had selected months ago. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as she had dreamed. The perfect life shattered. Emma-chan stood before the mirror in her bridal suite, her hands trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace veil that cascaded down her shoulders. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the luxury hotel, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. At 28 years old, she had built a life that seemed pulled from a dream. Her art gallery in downtown San Francisco had become one of the most respected in the city, showcasing emerging artists and hosting events that drew collectors from across the country. And today she was marrying Marcus Blackwell, the charming entrepreneur who had swept into her life 2 years ago, with his confident smile and grand promises. "You look absolutely stunning," her maid of honor Jessica Parker said from behind her. Jessica had been Emma's best friend since college, the person who had stood by her through every challenge and triumph. They had laughed together, cried together, built their dreams side by side. Jessica's own fashion boutique stood just 3 blocks from Emma's gallery, and they had often joked about being the dynamic duo of the San Francisco Arts District. Emma turned to face her friend, tears of happiness gathering in her eyes. "I can't believe this is really happening. After everything we've been through, Jess. All those late nights building the gallery. All those times I thought I'd never find someone who truly understood me." Jessica smiled, but something flickered in her eyes that Emma would only recognize later, in the terrible clarity of hindsight. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Emma. Every single bit." The wedding was set to begin in 2 hours. 300 guests were already gathering in the grand ballroom downstairs. The flowers had been arranged, the cake stood like a tower of white perfection, and the string quartet was preparing to play the music Emma had selected months ago. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as she had dreamed.